having fun every day. Every day I'm having fun. Our next guest is an expert in the area of human sexuality, intimacy, and relationships. Welcome, Dr. Sharna Striar. What is your primary focus now? And tell us a little bit more about your background.
I began as a psychiatric nurse, and then it was just a crazy time in the world, and I was very influenced by it and got quite involved in a lot of the change that was going on. And I went to University of Michigan, where I got my PhD, and I taught in the School of Nursing. And I said, wait a minute, we've got to bring the subject of sexuality to the curriculum. So I forged my way there and created a course and got involved in teaching at the School of Ed. And then I said, wait a minute, we got to bring something out to the community. People are really wanting to explore their attitudes and feelings about sexuality. They're wanting to learn about it. There's so many questions. And I just wanted to be a part of that movement. And now my practice is quite diversified, tends to be mostly with millennials. And then of course they come back. I've always been with that age group of 20s and 30s.
Can you give us some sex tips? I mean, right off the bat, I mean, aphrodisiacs, are they real? Champagne, hot peppers, do these things work?
You know what works? Your imagination. You know what works is being willing and able to explore, being in the moment, feeling your feelings, allowing the situation to unfold organically. Setting up your environment in such a way that it supports the expression of sexuality. Those are the things that matter. Understanding your own erotic impulses, caring about your partner, expressing your needs to your partner. I could go on. And of course, whatever I might say has to do with the situation at hand.
Tell us, how has the pandemic affected, everyone's sex lives?
It was first, wow, this is interesting. Hey, we could hang out. We don't have to rush around, and the world got quieter. And in some ways, people began to embrace that. Like, I don't have to be running in 1,000 directions. And they began to kind of relax a little bit. But then what happened is the sameness. Sameness is a wonderful thing, but sameness can also absolutely create a problem when it comes to expressions of sexuality, feeling the turn on, feeling the desire. Because you can't go from, oh my God, on my computer, worried about this and that, feeling like I'm a mess, to, okay, let's get it on. You've got to create the intention and the ambiance, and then the rapport, and then the connection. And then you got to listen to one another, and you got to take the journey. Like, for instance,
go on.
There you are, oftentimes, at least in New York, particularly the city, we're all in smaller spaces. So the idea of alone time has to be negotiated. Because when you're kind of on top of each other, always seeing each other, it's like things get kind of blurred. You can become part of the background. There's not enough differentiation. And that's very important to kind of trigger the erotica. So we would talk about creating different kinds of scenarios. Like, okay, let's set up a date. Both of you, like, drop the sweat clothes, get into something more fun and something that makes you feel good. And let's meet over in the southeast corner of the living room. I'm going to put a table there. We're going to have cocktails. And then from cocktails, maybe I'll give you a back rub. Maybe it'll be a massage. Maybe it might be a bath. Maybe it's a shower. Maybe it's talking about what turns you on. But it's it's beginning, it's intention. It's creating the context for connection.
Sex is, it's emotional or just physical?
Well, how do you experience it?
Well, it's both. Is it not both? It's emotional
Yeah.
and physical. I mean,
Yes.
begin.
Although some people can separate it out, but that oftentimes presents a problem. And a lot of times fear may play itself out. It may be that it's very orgasm-driven sex, very performance-driven, where the whole journey is left out. And in the journey is where you feel the emotion, because you have to start with a connection.
So you need to have an orgasm to have both?
Having an orgasm, always, it feels good. There's no question about it. But it is a part of lovemaking. So oftentimes lovemaking can begin with a glance, a look, eye contact, a touch. Every aspect of it has its value and allows you to enter into it in a very mindful way. And so when you get to the point of high arousal, which may bring you to an orgasm, and of course that was debated, is it vaginal or is it clitoral? Hey, it doesn't matter, it just feels good. Oftentimes the orgasm is even stronger, but it is not necessarily the determinator of whether you've had good sex or not.
17-year-old Tony asking the teacher, pornography, is that good or bad? Or
now think about it. You're this, I don't know, 11, 12, because every kid has their devices, 13, 14, and you're like, wow, look what's going on here. Oh my God. This strong, intercourse that oftentimes creates a problem. And they get used to their own hand. They don't understand the nature and the interaction of pleasuring, but it doesn't translate well to partner sex. And then they get freaked because, they come into my office, oh my God, either they've trained themselves to come within 2 minutes or less because they have siblings and they only have the bathroom for 5 minutes before the knock on the door. So they're training themselves to come fast, or they're so used to their own hand and the visual stimulation, it doesn't translate well.
They're equally concerned about their performance, would you say?
Well, that's the thing that I find fascinating about now. Now, I'm hearing much more of the females. They're like, I don't want the foreplay. The very thing that for so long was very much a part of the arousal for women. They're saying, I want that intercourse. They're putting a lot of pressure on young guys to produce that. They want that erection.
What difference has Viagra made?
Well, Viagra is a way of helping guys who have mild to low moderate performance anxiety. For some that have more moderate to severe anxiety, the Viagra does not necessarily, accomplish what they hope. So where I come in is, there's a place for that, but I'd rather that I help those patients that come in with that issue learn how to do it through behavioral and attitudinal shifts. So, for instance, instead of running on your head, oh my God, I'm going to lose my erection. They're out of their bodies when you run that fear trip, when you run that story. So you have to help them step back into their body, maybe take the idea of intercourse for a while off the table when you're working with a couple, and help them learn how to breathe and relax and step into the moment and find their own turn on, their own sensory experience that will relieve their anxiety and bring the experience that they want to the table.
Why is the forbidden so erotic?
It's because it is an unknown. It's stretching. It's going beyond the taboos.
Uh-huh.
It taps into our imagination. You know, you could have a good pattern. Hey, sometimes you know how to get from A to Z and it works. But if it's continuously the same way, it gets a little boring. It gets a little stale. So you've got to always put intention and creativity in the experience. A frequent one that I hear when one of the other partners is kind of apathetic about sex is they're not into me. They don't find me attractive. Oftentimes that has nothing to do with it. And so one thing that is interesting to do with couples that come and say, hey, we need to just fire up our sexuality is to have them share some of their understanding of their sexual fantasies, their sexual turn-ons, or maybe there's some interesting books that they may look at together and say, that's interesting. What do you think? Tuesday night, I'm free. How about it? You know, I mean, to be playful, to not let fear determine the situation, which we all encounter. We all encounter resistance. We all encounter backstories that get in the way of us moving forward. 12 years old, I had a weight problem. I don't now, but you know, they carry that forward. So we have to really kind of look at what the loops are that we've run through our mind and try to get to a more objective place. And then we're in a better place to deal with the problem that we have.
Certainly, as the younger Tony, you think you're going to meet your soulmate, we called it back then.
Yes.
And I think a lot of us did.
I think it's a wonderful romantic notion, and definitely, you know, there's an idealistic quality to it, but it runs into roadblocks because, sadly to say, no one is perfect, including ourselves. And so we begin to discover the parts that we don't embrace as well. That's not part of the soulmate, or there's a disengagement in some way. And then the anger occurs. They feel betrayed. And really, but the betrayal is partly in the notion of the perfect partner. A big part of my practice is negotiating the third stage, which is learning how to be accepting and how to be respectful and how to adapt and let go of that wonderful ideal image.
Being a doctor and wearing all of your hats, it's a tough life, I would imagine. I mean,
I have a confession to tell you. May I?
Yes.
I have never found it tough. When someone comes into my office, I admire them for the bravery of coming in, facing something that's uncomfortable, revealing their vulnerabilities, wanting to be better. It's like, wow, you know, I applaud them.
Well, we thank you so much for taking time out to be with us here.
Okay, it is my pleasure, Tony. Thank you for having me here.